Marcus, I got a dead madam, I got a concussion, and I got a real bad headache.
You got a headache? Well, let me tell you what I did last night. I had to sleep on my couch. I wake up this morning, I got a Power Ranger stuck up my ass.
Welcome to our nightmare, boys. See this? What's wrong with this picture, huh? It was these silver packets. They looked like bricks, little red tags on them. All that heroin, gone.
This was our career bust, which is what, $100 million?
Gone.
So they kill a decoy, it empties the station. Very smart.
But they don't kill a real cop because they know they had a whole force on their ass.
Takes a lot of brains to pull something like this off. The guy who pulled this off knew what he was doing. Definitely be an inside job, don't rule it out. The way I see it, we got 72 hours before the FBI and the DEA walk in here and shut us down, and we're gonna be the bad guys.
Relax, man. We got it before, we'll get it again.
Yeah, you got it all figured out, don't you?
Oh, you got to have faith, player.
About time we figured out how to be out of a job. No, scratch that. Everybody in the damn unit will be out of a job.
What the hell are you doing?
Oh, but don't worry. They tend to think Mike Lowry gonna be all right. Let's try to do this right. No gunshots. No dead bodies.
Well, you know, if I recall correctly, the last couple dead bad guys belong to you.
Please, you ain't even trying to compare body counts. Should I keep going all day? I'm out.
Get the dope back and do it quietly.
This whole situation is getting out of control.
You're goddamn right it's getting out of control. I need a SWAT team, helicopters. We're calling all cars here, baby.
You forgot your boarding pass.
Bad Boys hit the big screen on the 7th of April 1995 and arrived in the UK in June. Produced on a budget of $20 million, it was a financial success, bringing in $141 million worldwide, and became a massive hit on home video. Directed by Michael Bay, who was known in the industry for producing TV commercials and music videos, and the production was handled by the legendary producing duo Jerry Bruckheimer and the late Don Simpson. Despite the movie's success at the box office, it didn't fare well with the critics, which is now pretty common with the Bad Boys series. The movie was praised for its enjoyable chemistry between Martin Lawrence and Will Smith, but many felt the buddy cop formula felt tired by that point. Roger Ebert noted that despite the highly energetic approach of the two lead characters and the visual style of the film, their acting talents were mostly new wine in old bottles. Gene Siskel, in his appraisal of the film, said that he had lost interest in the film after its introduction, due to the very formulaic approach, suggesting that the production company did not spend enough time producing a script which would be suitable for their talents. With the mixed reviews, it didn't stop the movie being a breakaway success, making superstars out of Will Smith and Martin Lawrence, and of course the director Michael Bay, who formed a long-lasting working relationship with producer Jerry Bruckheimer. Bad Boys would have 2 sequels produced over the course of 2 decades. They will be discussed later in the video. Bad Boys almost never got made, and it almost didn't get made the way it did. Originally intended as a buddy comedy, the script was originally titled Bulletproof Hearts. The story was conceived by George Gallo, known for writing Wise Guys and Midnight Run, and the screenplay was written by Doug Richardson, who had co-written Die Hard 2. The script's wit and dialogue was spiced up by Michael Barry and Jim Mulholland, both of whom were TV comedy writers. Bulletproof Hearts was intended for Dana Carvey and John Lovitz as a production for Disney. Disney screen tested some scenes and weren't happy with the final results and decided to cancel it altogether. Producers Jerry Bruckheimer and Don Simpson, who by 1995 had sustained a reputation as 2 of the most successful producers in Hollywood. They were behind hits such as Flashdance, Beverly Hills Cop, Top Gun and Days of Thunder. They thought the script to Bulletproof Hearts had potential, and so did Sony Pictures, who bought the property from Disney. 28-year-old Michael Bay, formerly a director of TV commercials and music videos, was brought in to direct it, making it his first feature film. Sony's original intent was to cast Arsenio Hall, who eventually turned down the role, and Martin Lawrence as the leads, but Bay really wanted Will Smith. and enjoyed his work on TV such as The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and convinced Sony to cast him opposite Martin Lawrence. Martin wasn't really keen to have Will Smith on board at first. Martin was a stand-up comedian and host of Def Comedy Jam, and Will was a star of a family-friendly TV show and rapper, but he quickly changed his views on Will once they started working together. Their great chemistry made the movie a success. The film's title was changed to Bad Boys. It owed its title to the documentary reality TV series Cops, and that show's theme song performed by the reggae group Inner Circle. In the film, Will and Martin riff on that show's song. It's used near the end of the film and was licensed again for the sequels. Bad Boys has quite a big cast, so I'm going to focus on the characters who are integral to the story. We have Martin Lawrence as Detective Sergeant Marcus Burnett. Martin started out his career as a stand-up comedian and became very popular and started appearing in movies in 1989 in Do the Right Thing and comedies such as House Party. Once Bad Boys was a hit, his career as a lead took off, with Blue Streak and the popular Big Mama's House series. Will Smith plays as Detective Sergeant Michael Lowry. Will was already famous for his hip-hop career with Jazzy Jeff and made the leap to TV with the hit TV show The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air that ran from 1990 to 1996. He had done a couple of roles on film, but wasn't cast as a lead actor until Bad Boys. Tia Leone plays as Julie, who witnesses the death of her friend Max. Up until Bad Boys, she worked in TV and had small roles in A League of Her Own and Wyatt Earp. Tia went on to star in Deep Impact and Jurassic Park 3, and still acts today, appearing in the popular CBS show Madame Secretary. Jackie Carriot plays as Fouchette, a French drug kingpin who has stolen the heroin from the cops and plans to cut the drugs to sell it for a higher price. Jackie was known for his roles in Nikita, 1492, Conquest of Paradise, GoldenEye and Kiss of the Dragon. Often cast as a villain for good reason, as he always provides an intense and threatening performance, especially in Kiss of the Dragon, which is my favourite performance of him as the bad guy. Joe Pantoliano stars as Captain Conrad Howard, who has an incredible short temper and is on the verge of having a mental breakdown due to the antics of Marcus and Mike. Joe rose to fame for his role in Risky Business and has appeared in dozens of great movies such as The Fugitive, Bound, The Matrix, Memento, and he returned for the Bad Boys sequels. Teresa Randall plays as Teresa, Marcus's wife. Teresa started out her career as a dancer and made the jump to film, and appeared in such movies as Malcolm X, Space Jam, Spawn, and of course returned for Bad Boys 2 and 3. Mark Helgenberger stars as Captain Alison Sinclair, who works for Internal Affairs and has come down like a ton of bricks on Captain Howard for the loss of the seized drugs, and gives him 5 days to get them back or she will shut down the entire department. Marg is probably best known from the movies Species 1 and 2 and the popular crime show CSI. Anna Thompson plays as Francine, who works as a secretary at the police station. She appears very nervous once they discover an ex-cop was involved in the stolen drugs, and she begins to withhold information about her connections to him. Anna hasn't acted for a number of years, but I'm sure some of you will recognise her from True Romance and The Crow. And last but not least, we have Karen Alexander playing as Maxine, also known as Max. Karen has spent most of her career as a model. Bad Boys was her only acting gig, so she has continued with her modelling career and works in the fashion industry. Max becomes the unfortunate victim of the police investigation into the missing drugs. Principal photography started in June 1994 in Miami and finished in August. Director Michael Bay revealed he had a bad script in the commentary for the DVD. What he did have were 2 great charismatic actors, and that's what the movie is all about. With it being a genre movie, Bay and his team wanted to give it a whole new look. With Bay aware of the script's problems, he often engaged Smith and Lawrence in discussions about how the dialogue and scenes could be improved. He often allowed them to improvise while the cameras were rolling. He secretly told Smith to call Lawrence a bitch before the car scene. The whole 2 bitches in the sea was improvised, as was Lawrence's comments when Leone called him gay. The scene with the shop owner putting a gun to Brunette and Lowry's head is also improvised. They came up with the line,
Put the gun down and give me a pack of tropical fruit bubblicious.
And some Skittles.
The movie had a limited budget of what Bay wanted to achieve. He had to cough up some of his own money, totaling $25,000 for the climactic gunfight scene in the airport hangar. Bay admitted that much of his fast-cutting technique came about in order to simply obscure or distract from cheap sets. This is the only movie he has directed with a 1:85:1 aspect ratio, due to keeping the costs down. Every film since then he has directed has been shot in the CinemaScope format. In 1995, Jerry Bruckheimer and Don Simpson had 3 movies produced and released: Bad Boys, Crimson Tide and Dangerous Minds. Their final collaboration would be On the Rock. Jerry and Don had a difficult relationship after Days of Thunder didn't perform well with critics back in 1990, and its production budget got out of control. Don had a wild lifestyle, doing a lot of drugs and partying, which caused problems on set and behind the scenes. so they parted ways and didn't work together until 1994, but Don's personal problems were still apparent and escalating. Jerry had to take on more responsibilities on their latest productions, so Jerry had to make the decision to terminate their partnership in December of 1995. The two agreed, however, to finish work on The Rock, which was already in production by that point with Michael Bay directing. On January the 19th, 1996, Simpson was found dead in the bathroom of his Bel Air, Los Angeles home. His death was initially believed to be of natural causes. An autopsy later determined that Simpson had died of heart failure, caused by combined drug intoxication. At the time of his death, there were 21 different drugs in his system, including antidepressants, stimulants, sedatives, and tranquilizers. The Rock was released after Simpson's death and is dedicated to him. To honour Don's memory, Jerry still to this day has Don's name listed as part of his production company. The movie opens with Miami detectives Marcus Burnett and Mike Lowry having recently seized $100 million worth of heroin, but it soon gets stolen from a secure police vault. Internal Affairs suspect it's an inside job and threaten to shut down the entire department unless the police get the drugs back. Mike goes to speak with his informants to find out if anyone has been recently partying and throwing around lots of money. His friend Max, who works as a call girl, is approached to find out. She gets herself and her best friend Julie hired as escorts by Eddie Dominguez, a former crooked cop. The party is soon interrupted by Eddie's French drug kingpin boss, Fouchette, and his henchmen. Eddie is killed for taking some of the drugs along with Max, while Julie watches in shock. She manages to escape by jumping out of a window and falling into a swimming pool. At the police station, the captain receives a phone call from Julie and she insists on only talking to Lowry because of his connection to Max, but Lowry is not available after being knocked out by Noah, one of Fouchette's thugs, while investigating the madam who hired Max. Knowing she never met Lowry, the captain forces Burnett to impersonate Lowry to talk to her. At her apartment, Burnett manages to persuade Julie to come with him, but they quickly get attacked, and Marcus takes out one of the thugs and they flee in his family car. They head to Mike's fancy apartment to keep Julie safe, so they can question her later about the murder. Mike joins Marcus at the station the following morning and is updated on the situation. The captain tells them both to impersonate each other to avoid Julie escaping without helping them with the investigation. Looking through mugshots, Julie identifies Noah as one of the henchmen. Marcus and Mike go to a club knowing it's one of Noah's hangouts. What they don't know is Julie has followed them and is armed. She spots Fouchette and attempts to shoot him. Marcus in the nick of time stops her, but the gun goes off and everyone flees the club. The trio are involved in a car chase with Noah tailing them, but he meets his demise as Larry takes him out. Larry and Burnett's next step is to meet their old informant Jojo and learn about the location of a chemist who is rumoured to be cutting the stolen drugs. They manage to find Fouchette's hidden location, but they are spotted by the drug kingpin, and he follows them back to Lowry's apartment to get rid of them once and for all. Composer Mark Mancina handled the score to Bad Boys. Mark was one of the first young composers recruited by Hans Zimmer's music house, Media Ventures, and one of the first of its apprentice musicians to venture out into Hollywood and make a name for himself. He scored a number of low-budget movies and worked with Zimmer on Days of Thunder. Mancina's big break came when he was offered the job on Jan de Bont's hit film Speed. The music was a mix of orchestral and electronic cues that matched the high-tech action, and Mark's style really helped define the action scores of the 90s, as after Bad Boys he worked on Twister, Assassins and Con Air. Bruckheimer was impressed by Mancina's work, and the early cuts of Bad Boys had the Speed score temp track to it. Mancina came on board and knew the producers wanted a similar sound to what he had produced for Speed, but he envisioned different possibilities for the music while matching the same tone. Mark said in an interview that the Bad Boys theme was a kind of dance groove. He tried different things for the melody until he hit upon the guitar sound. He also wanted to add a John Barry flavour to it. He wanted to give it a little bit of a James Bond feeling. Michael Bay didn't really know what he wanted for the score, so producers Jerry and Don started making most of the decisions on its direction. Once the film starts, it introduces the theme straight away with the carjacking. The theme is presented in different styles throughout the movie. The first use of it is more of a hip and funky version, then the serious rendition of it kicks in with the opening credits. This is where the music really shines. You can hear the theme begin to build up in volume, and it instantly strikes the right tone that this isn't a kids movie, it's a serious cop drama with a sense of style to it. When that electric guitar blends into the main percussive theme, it just makes it such a cool musical piece for the characters of Mike and Marcus. There are tender moments in the score that deal with the death of Max and Julie expressing her loss, with the use of an acoustic guitar, which are wonderfully composed. The score for the action hits the sweet spot perfectly by adding tension and adrenaline to the scenes, with the chase on foot as Mike saves Marcus at the last second. For a movie that is fairly low budget, the music really amps it up to make the film far larger in scale. Overall, it's a fantastic score. Mark had intended to return for Bad Boys 2 but decided to opt out, as he didn't agree with Michael Bay on the score's direction. He had no desire for simply rhythmic action riffing, which what he felt didn't make a good score. Bay didn't like what Mark was doing for the sequel, and the direction he kept pushing the composer made it, in Mark's opinion, a bland action score. So he was replaced by Trevor Rabin, who dropped the original theme Mark had created for the first film and gave Bay what he wanted. What we got was a bland and forgettable score. Mark Mancina was right about his concerns. Fans of Mancina's work were left disappointed come the album release in 1995. It only featured one track of his work, and some of the industrial rock tracks featured in the club sequence didn't make the album either. What was released was a compilation of R&B and hip-hop tracks. The album featured artists such as Keith Martin, John B featuring Babyface, and Diana King. 3 music videos were produced, with Will and Martin appearing in Diana King's song Shy Guy. The album sold well, and the number of tracks released as singles also performed well in the R&B and hip-hop charts. The original score by Mark Mancina did eventually get released in full in 2007 when La La Land Records put out a limited release, and it's been out of print since then and sells for nearly £100 on eBay, and even more from private sellers on Amazon. So if you want to sample some of his work, you can find some tracks on YouTube. Now, before we get to my final thoughts on Bad Boys, fans had to wait 8 years for a sequel, which is a pretty long wait, as most studios plan to have a follow-up within 2 years if the first film was a success. Bad Boys 2 arrived in 2003, with Will and Martin back as Mike and Marcus, and Michael Bay returning to direct. The film follows detectives Burnett and Lowry investigating the flow of illegal drugs going into Miami. The film had a huge budget of $130 million and grossed $273 million worldwide, which are good numbers, but the cost of making it and marketing the picture didn't leave a huge amount of profit for Sony. But like the first film, it did really well when it came to DVD. The critics were even more negative on the sequel, highlighting its messy plot, misogyny, and its lengthy runtime. On an episode of At the Movies with Ebert and Roper, film critic Richard Roper named Bad Boys 2 the worst film of 2003. Now, I personally don't think it was the worst film of that year. I quite enjoyed parts of it. The plot is a bit incoherent and obviously bloated. Michael's movies often run 20 to 30 minutes too long. The humour is often misplaced and a bit offensive, but it delivered on the action sequences for the most part, the best being the attack on the drug dealer's house in Cuba. It was utter bonkers. I've never been a big fan of Bay's editing style during this period. The car chase, despite being pretty epic as those cars come flying towards Mike and Marcus, the editing is too fast to soak in the spectacular nature of it all. The best parts for me is when it's not dealing with the action, seeing Marcus and Mike break into that morgue and Marcus accidentally takes some ecstasy, making it one of the highlights of the film. Martin Lawrence gets some great material in this sequel to play up his grumpy and fed up attitude and not getting enough quality time with his wife. Will Smith is still as charming as ever and does a great job being an action hero.
Point Break or Bad Boys 2?
Which one do you think I prefer?
No, I mean, which one do you want to watch first?
You are pulling my leg.
The film was a big influence on Hot Fuzz, seeing Edgar Wright trying to match what Hollywood was doing at the time, and the characters in the film tried to copy what they saw in Bad Boys 2, making for a fun parody. Bad Boys 2 is certainly not a bad film. It has some fun elements, but the plot is a bit rubbish, and the film is Michael Bay turned up to 11, which I'm not a fan of, but you can't deny his success as a director, and there are clearly fans of his style and work. In January 2020, the third entry in the series Bad Boys for Life finally arrived, making it a nearly 17-year gap since Part 2. With Michael Bay no longer directing, this new entry has surprisingly fared better with the critics than Parts 1 and 2. The film deals with Marcus retiring from the Force and Mike dealing with the demons of his past. If you want to know my thoughts on the film, you can find a review on my channel, or you can click on the pop-up card in the top right hand corner of the video. I saw the first Bad Boys film when it came out to buy on videotape. I don't recall ever renting it. I certainly couldn't go watch it at the cinema as it was rated an 18. I do remember it being promoted when it hit cinemas. It was all over MTV and cable stations. I grew up watching The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and was surprised to see Will Smith in a big action movie. Obviously, come 1996, he starred in one of the biggest movies of the 90s with Independence Day. In my early teens, I wasn't familiar with the buddy cop genre, so the complaints of it being another formulaic cop movie certainly certainly went over my head, and I didn't care. The film looked cool, and it was. Me and my friends always had movie nights at the weekends and had a selection of videotapes we rewatched, such as The Crow, Judge Dredd and Bad Boys. The opening scene was brilliant, seeing Mike and Marcus just bicker like an old couple as Marcus is eating junk food in Mike's Porsche and complaining of no cup holder. Then his gang attempts to rob them, not knowing they're cops. That opening act really nailed their chemistry straight away, and you knew what to expect from the film. As Michael Bay had highlighted, the overall story isn't really anything special. It's another action drama with cops dealing with drug dealers and comedy thrown into it. You have one guy who is single and the other is married, and they have to deal with a short-tempered captain. Very familiar traits of the buddy cop genre. We saw it in Lethal Weapon and a brilliant parody of the genre in Loaded Weapon 1. Despite critics being tired of these types of movies, audiences certainly weren't. We had Rush Hour come out in 1998, as this was a vehicle to promote Chris Tucker and take advantage of Jackie Chan's recent success in the West, and this series spawned 2 sequels. So for Bad Boys, it took something that was already an established genre, and what they did with it was do a new spin on the formula and jazz it up with MTV style visuals to give teenagers and younger adults something that would appeal to them. Casting a comedian and a rapper turned actor was part of the change at the time when it came to action movies. We saw Keanu Reeves in Speed, and the following year Nicolas Cage was in The Rock. This shift to casting actors instead of muscle-bound martial artists was now becoming a serious thing. Simpson and Bruckheimer always had that talent of knowing what general audiences really wanted. It didn't really matter what the critics thought. I'm sure there is always an element of concern about that, but the idea is to capitalise on what's popular, and both Martin Lawrence and Will Smith had a loyal fan base that increased to large numbers once the movie came out. With the story being kickstarted by the missing drugs, we are introduced to Julie, wanting to get revenge on the gang who killed Max. This becomes the main driving force for her and Mike to get back at these guys and to retrieve the stolen drugs. But because Max doesn't have much screen time, we don't really get to know her. There is little connection for the audience to really get behind Julie's loss. They talk about this great friendship between them that never gets explored. Julie herself is quite a frustrating character. She's difficult from the offset and puts herself at risk due to not doing the right thing. And because she vents her anger at this gang for killing Max, she often gets in the way of Mike and Marcus doing their job. Her character works best when she's winding up Marcus, and they play off each other really well with those comedic moments. But her role in the film is to identify the gang members, and beyond that she doesn't really add anything to it. Martin Lawrence certainly gets the best material to work with to push his comedy talents. He has to pretend to be Mike to fool Julie, which doesn't really work, and he has to balance his home life with his day job. His wife is always very paranoid, and despite Marcus being totally faithful to her, he has a terrible poker face and always comes across as lying when he clearly isn't. His wife is totally in charge of him and he can't win any argument, which helps provide some of the best laughs in the movie. It's his tired and fed up attitude that really makes his character so lovable. Will Smith, as we've seen over the years, is always charming and funny. He is an extremely likeable personality. In this he gets to play a wealthy, smooth talking cop who is living the high life where the rest of the other cops are living paycheck to paycheck. Marcus vents his frustration, but he can't deny that Mike is a great detective. Will certainly takes the role seriously and plays the hero of the pair, but it's clear Martin gets a lot of the best gags and more scenes to really have fun with the character. There are a few moments where the comedy doesn't quite work. The scene with Mike and Marcus playing good cop bad cop with Jojo failed to generate any laughs from me, but I think that is the only moment that felt a bit flat. The main villain Fouchette doesn't really get much to do in the film sadly, and isn't fully developed as a character. He's off camera quite a lot and his henchmen do most of the work. Casting Chucky Cario, who is a superb actor, does shine when he's on camera, but he doesn't really get much to do. The action scenes throughout the movie are generally good for the most part. The end finale is clearly the highlight, but the action scenes do appear a bit messy throughout, and it's hard to figure out the geography of the sequences. They start out well but have a jumbled middle section, and they end on a high note. As it was the early days of Michael Bay dealing with action and having a limited budget to work with, I don't think the coverage is as well staged, and he has less cameras to work with. The car chase is covered in a lot of close-ups, making it difficult to fully take in what's going on, and the chase on foot as Mike and Marcus try to get Julie back is confusing on what direction they are going, but the whole sequence has a great wrap-up as we see Mike running in slow motion and saving Marcus at the last second. It's an iconic moment, I would say, from the film. For me personally, this film is still the best of the series. There are so many great moments of fantastic photography throughout. The shots of Miami during the opening credits are beautifully captured, and Michael Bay does have a good eye for visuals. This talent made him a successful TV commercials director. The comedy works well throughout but doesn't take over the picture. The story comes first before trying to throw any gags at you. Its tone is pretty solid throughout, unlike the sequels, which I felt were a bit uneven. Sure, it doesn't have the production values of the sequels, but I think that works in its favour. These type of movies don't need $100 million budgets. Working with limited resources helped keep it grounded with a sense of reality, and having the action scenes played out in not so extravagant ways gave it more believability in execution. It's not throwing everything at you. So with Michael Bay feeling somewhat limited at the time appears to have restrained him from going too far. With this being his first feature, he has less power as a director, with Bruckheimer and Simpson looking over his shoulder to maintain a sense of control over the picture. It's a solid buddy cop movie thanks to Will Smith and Martin Lawrence's on-screen chemistry. It doesn't quite have the emotional core of the Lethal Weapon series. What makes these types of movies work and stand the test of time is the characters, however. The plot is never as important, it's just there to provide the groundwork to let these characters shine, and that's its real selling point, and that's what it does best.
You don't know me. My name's Julie Mott. And I was Max Logan's best friend.
Okay, whoa, calm down. Now talk to me now. Yeah.
And she said if she ever needed anything, I need your help. There was a cop that threw that little party back at the Biltmore.
Former cop, okay? We got rid of him a long time ago. If you want to live, you ain't got no choice. You got to trust me.
This witness, it's the only good news I got, okay? The only good news. You guys are bad news. So where's the girl now?
His place.
What? You left her by herself?
You left a strange hooker alone in my apartment? The girl is not a hooker, as far as I know. Gee, I had to stash her somewhere.
Now, if we get this witness to ID the shooters, maybe we catch our bad guys.
That's the guy.
Can we help you?
Hey, I staked out all night in the back of that jalopy, too. You know, I think I earned a peek.
Hey, this is real cop stuff. Okay, this is not Charlie's Angels. Steals our shit, kidnaps Julie, shoots at my wife. Oh, we beating him down. We beating him down. Oh, you better win. Better win.
I hope you enjoyed the video. Be sure to subscribe to see more retrospectives and commentaries. Also click on the bell to be notified of the latest reviews. If you want access to exclusive videos and to watch my content a few days before it's on YouTube, you can head on over to my Patreon. Thank you very much.